Holly, as expected, a fantastic job by you, and thank you so much for all the work that you did at HUD, for taking all the phone calls, for listening to all the rants, for the Sage Council, and coming to so many of those meetings. And thank you for the white paper, which I think we need to get into the hands of people like Chuck Schumer and Congress people, and they need to implement a lot of the changes. I wanted to see this white paper done because I know there needs to be a candid, honest assessment of the recovery. And I have been very critical throughout at times, but let me start out by saying I know this is difficult. And as I think Holly did a great job of framing this, that there are no villains. But the reality is I can line this room with Staten Islanders who will tell you that the recovery was worse to them than the storm itself. And that means we as government made mistakes. And it's easy today to put everything at the feet of Amy Peterson, who heads up Build It Back, who is an earnest public servant who has done a great job. I think that does a disservice to the 24 Staten Islanders who passed away, to the hundreds of Staten Islanders and other folks impacted by the storm. And I think it does a disservice to future New Yorkers because it doesn't speak about the process candidly. Mistakes were made early, they were made often, they were repeated, they were compounded, and by the time the city program really found itself, we were in the summer of 15 and we were really deep down the rabbit hole. So I'm not trying to pick a fight with a billionaire ex-mayor. I had plenty of battles with that administration back in the day. I'm not trying to tug on the current mayor's cape. But I owe it to my constituents to ensure there's a process that is frank about what went wrong. And I don't mean to be defensive when I say this. This isn't Monday morning quarterbacking, because 3 weeks into the storm, former Councilman Ignazio and I reached out to then Mayor Bloomberg and said, we believe the process for moving forward should be replicating what we had on Staten Island to address the overdevelopment issue, the lower growth management task force, which was the best decision-making process that we've had, where you had city agencies with local elected officials and guaranteed local input. And my hope is, and my expectation is, Holly, that your white paper will instigate and encourage others, academia, other not-for-profits, to go back and say, this is what we got wrong, this is what we need to fix so that we won't repeat it. And I will close with this. I spent 48 amazing hours on the ground in January of 2013 talking to, in New Orleans, talking to folks. Brad actually set up Brad Gare set it up for Vinny Ignazio and myself. And it was 7.5 years after Katrina. They were candid, they were honest. Everything they said to us was their truth. And I have the very notes from that trip. And just about everything they said was prophetic. I have talked about that trip in almost every conversation. And they told us what they got wrong, and we need to do that. We need to do that for future New Yorkers. We need to do that for the next municipality or town that suffers some of the pain that we did.